Howdy, howdy, folks. Welcome to Babble with Bronies. I am your host. My name is Everlasting Joy, along with my good coworkers, Mr. Ben and Twilight is Magic. I want to thank you for joining us here today. Now, before anyone starts throwing stuff at me, just let me explain. Last week I said we would be reviewing Season 2, Episode 4 today, and then the synopsis in midweek said we would be interviewing someone again. That was all my fault. Our interviewee, Mike, way back in August, we both agreed to I would interview him today on the 6th. Well, last week when I announced what we were doing, I forgot about that. So again, that was all me. And I apologize for that on both everyone's behalf, both the audience and Mike's. Speaking of Mike, though, let's give him a call. Mike?
Hello.
Hey, can you hear me on everything?
Yep.
Chat, can you hear him? I'll give them a minute to respond, but welcome.
All right.
Oh yeah, that's what I was going to do. Bring this.
Don't mind me just typing up an email for a moment, but I'll be done quick. Let's see.
Well, I don't have a lot of time to
No, you go on with
Never
your
mind.
things.
Yep, I'm going. Well, they seem to be hearing everything okay, so we'll you can just kind of listen along because I'm going to do the news first.
Yep.
All right, folks. Only piece of news we have this week is just the Brony State movies, wherein for this week, the A movie is The Abyss. The Pony 1 episode is Secret of My Excess. The B movie is Troop Beverly Hills. And Pony 2 is The Mysterious Ne'er-Do-Well. So stop on by this Friday at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. That's 1900 hours. Where was I? For the movie night. There is also an encore on Saturday at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So stop on by. Hope you enjoy our feature, our website's feature. It's gonna be fun. Albeit I'm not going to be watching the Pony episodes because we'll be watching them shortly. But anyway, that's all for the art. So, Mike, since you're the guest of honor, art or videos first? We do have a video.
Either one's fine. Art, because it's alphabetical.
Okay, that'll work. So, let me bring you into the picture. I already did. And let me drop myself out. Move this over a little bit. Alright. I hope he's here. If not, let's just go ahead and bring him in, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you do this to me, Skype? Why?
Oh, I'm here.
Tox?
Yo, I'm here.
Hey. Welcome.
All right. Hi. All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, since we've got an art request, let's start with art with Toxic Mario's Not Fun.
Yes. That comic. All right. You can read it if you want.
I was going to ask, Mike, do you want to... how rude of me. There's the link. It's only Pinkie Pie reading who's speaking. So, do you want to read it, Mike, or should I?
Oh, go ahead. You do a better job anyway. I'm still typing up this email anyway.
Fair enough.
All right. There we go.
Excuse
I came in just a little bit late. I'm watching football games.
Which game?
Any game. I don't care. Whatever game's online.
Fair enough.
Hey, Fluttershy, I have to get going. I promised Applejack we'd hang out later today.
Actually, one of the better pinkies I've done in a long time. Couple hours later.
So Applejack, we having fun yet?
Ding.
Wah, 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 wah.
I think someone in the chat was actually asking what my Skype logo is.
Oh, no, they're talking about when you guys are not talking, it goes to this default
Oh,
logo.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
That.
So anyway, what do you have to say about this, Tux?
Okay. First of all, trying to do that second to last panel was really, really annoying because I actually had to. When you see there, I actually had to flip the entire comic upside down in order to make that panel.
Mm-hmm.
And let me just tell you that my eyes were absolutely killing me because I'm not used to working on something upside down like that when it should be right side up. But that comic, I'm trying to do more comics like this for a little bit because I got to do small, short, simple comics because I have a convention at the end of the month in Detroit. So I want to do comics that play off double meaning words. So I know the next one that I want to do is something that has to do with, like hitting the hay type thing. I know it's done, and I know it's been done a million times, but I want to have my own version of it. But there's a lot of different things I want to get done, and this one was just the first of I think 3 that I want to do in that general type of scheme. But I don't know if you had any questions on it. Oh man, they're coming after you. They're coming after this stream.
Oh shit! Get down! What? Oh, what? I'm just trying to think of the
Think of a
action
good
going
question.
on in the chat.
I had to get my backpack.
Oh, I know what I was going to ask. How did AJ end up in that tree like that?
I actually pictured it as Pinky being the first to tie up AJ, and then Pinky would just randomly tie herself, like fourth wall breaking. But it's one of those things where it is. It's interesting. I'll put it that way. It was overall a fun comic to do, but the that first panel with the clock, that was kind of interesting because I'd never done that clock scene before.
Mm-hmm.
So all I did was kind of reference the Hearts and Who's episode and kind of made a different angle of every angle that they show in the show before. It wasn't never that close and that, that angle.
It works. You made it work.
It works. Honestly, this is one of my better background comics. There's a lot of different things that I tried, especially in the third panel, which is trying to do that extra hill. I'm trying to work on single pictures like DBZ pony pictures. Like if anybody was in my stream, you'll see what I'm trying to do with I guess I'll say it, my DBZ Scootaloo. I'm trying to put a lot of foreground rocks and push it further back.
Dang.
Which that should be up this week.
No.
Almost. I have 2 more nights to work on her, probably.
All right.
Let's see. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I have to say on that comic, because there's really no... Oh, yeah, that's right. There's another play. I had my notebook open. There's another comic that I'm doing that's playing out the world where it nailed it. And I'm not... I know what I'm doing with that one. That's a really good one.
No.
But that's all I got for this one.
All right. Well, thank you for your time, Tox.
Yes, no problem. I'm going to get back to watching some football and watching the stream.
Excellent.
Have a good day.
Yes, sir. Thanks. Whee!
Ladies and gentlemen, Toxic Mario. Here's the link, of course. And let us move on. Oh, how about we go with Here's one that I found early in the week that just really took me for a it took me by surprise, but I was glad to find it. This one is titled Sonic Rainboom by Nutrafin. It's a SFM actually. There's your side, Mike. And the reason that this one drew my attention is most SFM clips on DeviantArt, they're not to sound mean, they don't have this kind of quality to them. Most of them are just, simple profile shots or some GIFs, which is, fine. I'm hoping to see more action out of people in the future. But this one just stood out because it was, well, as you're putting it, Thunderbolt, badass. Do you have anything to say, Mike?
Yeah. Well, SFM is pretty good for animation. I mean, I've tried to animate actually a little in Blender. Not quite as easy.
Go ahead.
No, I've got nothing else to say. It's just,
all right.
It's a good animating tool.
I have always, since they've been starting to use SFM as a animation source within this fandom, I've always been so impressed with it because they've just kept going further and further with it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's move on.
The quality also seems to match very nicely with MLP stuff.
Definitely.
Like, it's not overly grainy like Call of Duty, whatever, or it's like cartoony.
Mm-hmm.
It's good.
Let's go with this this next one by Hoy Carnage titled Cider. This was a nice little sculpture I picked up when I found. It was just a nice sculpture I found. Quote, I already posted these two sculpts hugging as intended, but before I mailed them, I realized they could also do this. And this is why I picked it up, was because I think this is just fantastic. He took a nice, I could have gotten them hugging, but I thought, you know what? Let's go with this one that has a little more action to it. That's what I'm looking for. Mike?
Oh. Still typing up that email.
Fair enough. If you want me to just kind of do this without you, I can.
Well, I mean, I'm almost done here
Okay, fair enough.
with that email, so.
But yeah, I saw this
Sending it out.
and I just thought, okay, I've seen Hoy Carnage's work before, and I loved it because I could stand to find more sculptors. So when I saw this, I thought, this has just got to go on. This just has to go on. All right, then let us move on.
Right then.
Okay, let's go with this one by Pixel Kitties titled Rainy Day Friends. Saw this one and I was like, well, this is a nice surprise. The reason I like this so much is partially because it's, well, actually, before I go on, quote, truth be told, I have no recollection of making this. While cleaning up my folders at work today, I found this Photoshop file. If not the trillion or so layers and the half-assed way they've organized, I would have thought I ended up with someone else's PSD. But nope, pretty sure it's mine. Must have made it under the influence of a beer, a lack of sleep, or a grenade box from Taco Bell. Or a grande box from Taco Bell. Maybe all three. Yes, I live a pretty wild life. End quote. Yeah, I saw this and I just thought, well, this is, a pleasant surprise because it's been so long since we've seen the felt type. And what's nice about this is it's just a nice picture. It's not a t-shirt advertisement or anything like that. It's just a nice picture. And that sometimes is all I'm asking for.
Finally done with that. All right. Art.
We're on Rainy Day Friends.
So I see.
Anything to say
Yep.
about it?
Just that based on the curvature of the Earth there, it must be a really tiny Equestria.
That would be true.
It's like they're standing on a neutron star.
That would be tiny.
What if ponies are made of neutronium?
Well, aren't neutron stars about the size of the Earth, most standard ones?
I thought some of them were like just kilometers across.
Some of them, I suppose, could be.
I mean, they're
It
essentially a
depends on
single nucleus held together by gravitational forces. Fascinating.
by heavy gravitational forces at that. Anyway, let's move on before we start techno-babbling. Oh, who do you... Let's go with this one by Harwick's art titled A Healthy Appreciation for Apples. Balloon this one up a little bit. What really struck me about this picture, folks, was not just because it's Harwick's, but just the fact that I love his experiments in lighting here. This isn't something terribly new, but I think it's been a while since I looked back through his gallery, and it's been a while. But this is something where I feel it's been a while since he's done something this dramatic in terms of lighting effects. I saw this and I'm like, this is one that has to go on for that reason and that reason alone. The movement from shading to that very bright light is a great gradient effect on his behalf. A light gradient, if you will.
Mm-hmm. I certainly couldn't paint something like that. Or draw or whatever.
The man does good work.
Well, I suppose there is one thing. Just an experimental project, though. I would need an electroencephalograph and some gum.
A wired integrated female electroencephalograph. Or a wife. Yeah, I couldn't
SpongeBob
resist.
references.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
All
I
right.
just don't see how Karen can be an electroencephalograph when she's obviously some other sort of AI computer thing. An electroencephalograph specifically is a thing that reads brainwaves. It's like a hat, almost.
Yep.
Honestly, like, whatever. SpongeBob. It can have whatever inconsistencies it wants.
I suppose it fell under, they needed the acronym.
Yeah.
Either that or maybe she's constantly reading Plankton's mind or analyzing his brainwaves, and therefore that's where she gets all her snark from.
So Karen is actually Plankton. Oh my god.
Dun, dun, dun. And last in the art is Hey Sugar Cube by White Diamonds, Ltd. Okay, just White Diamonds, mind you. 1, 2, 3. It's been forever since we've had her on the show here. And, matter of fact, I can't even remember the last time she was on. She's back from a hiatus. There was another I could have picked. She did release a few others this week, but I want to quote something from her. Where is it? Quote, October 1st this year has been designated as Applejack Appreciation Day. And while I personally feel that it is a terrible shame that such a day is even needed to get people to come together and show AJ the love and appreciation she deserves, that doesn't mean I would miss participating for anything either. End quote. I think that speaks for itself right there.
Yeah, pretty much. I remember White Diamonds from long ago on EQD. Months, maybe years ago almost. Wow. Anyways, last time we talked, I was like, white diamonds are actually not forever, like everyone says. Like, they actually gravitize and everything. Though, I mean, diamonds have some very interesting properties. For example, blue diamonds, which typically would have like boron or something, can be used as semiconductor materials.
Which would make sense given boron's a metalloid.
Yeah.
It's the clear ones that last forever.
Yeah. I would go for silicon carbide just for the fact that it doesn't gravitize. Like, I mean, diamond is metastable, not forever.
Where?
Yeah, whatever. Technicalities. I mean, it's as forever as uranium, pretty much, because it takes billions of years, probably, for anything to happen to it.
But a billion is not forever, technically.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
'Tis a matter of perspectives.
Yep.
Anyway, let's move on. All we have left is the video. This one, now, do you want me to link it to you in the Skype, Mike?
I'll see it in the Brony Steak chat.
Okay. The reason I ask is, because, well, anyway, this one you guys probably saw earlier in the week, but this one, yeah, this is one of those cases where it came out of nowhere, and I was just absolutely impressed with it. This one's titled "A Tale of One Shadow" by Nastasia Solitude. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm going to put you on hold, Mike, and get you back in here after it.
Sure.
Just like you, for how long must I wait? I know there's something wrong. Your concrete heart isn't beating, and I've tried to make it come alive. No shadows, just red lights. Now I'm here to rescue you. Inside my head, so loud and clear, you're screaming, covered up with a smile I've learned to feel. Just sunshine and blue sky, is this all we get for living here? Come fire, let it burn and love come racing through. I'm still alive, I cannot apologize, no. I'm still alive, I cannot apologize, no. I've learned to lose, I've learned to win. I've turned my face against the wind. I will move fast, I will move slow. Take me where I have to go.
Tale of One Shadow by Nastasia Solitude, people. And Mike?
Hello.
Hello. All right. Are you ready?
Sure.
All right, then let us get this going. Let's begin with the usual first five. State for the name your record. State for the record your name, which you wish to be addressed by. Your job in the Brony fandom, or your most major one anyway. Your favorite episode. It can be season or per season. Your favorite pony from G4, and if applicable, your favorite pony from any generation.
Well, I'm Michael. I do a lot of cool things, and well, I don't typically pick favorites, I guess. So, no favorite pony in particular, unless some like silly answer, if you wish. But yeah, I guess more specifically, I do a lot of 3D printing as well as MLP stuff, and I mean, my interests go on and on.
What about
We'll get into more of that, I guess, in a minute.
Okay. What about favorite pony? I know you said what you said, but does that apply to this? Is that the same answer as your favorite episode?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, there's so many episodes to choose from at this point. I mean, depends on my mood, what I want to watch. Sometimes I prefer even to watch something else. Who knows?
Fair enough.
And I guess by default, maybe Twilight Sparkle. Science.
So tell us about 3D printing. As someone like me who has only heard about it very vaguely, or with bits and pieces of information, can you give us a little more information on it?
Well, I mean, there's a lot there. Like, there's the RepRap Wiki, which is a huge site. And there's like pages and pages of all sorts of technologies that are used for 3D printing. And I mean, technically some methods like selective laser sintering and what was it? That method that they use with the photopolymer. What was it? Anyway, whatever. Anyways, there's a whole bunch of methods that have been around for maybe 20 years or more. I mean, it's just they played very specialized roles, and typically the machinery to produce those sorts of prints, stereolithography. That was it for the photopolymer. Yeah, you shoot a laser, an ultraviolet laser at something, and it hardens the material. It causes it to polymerize and cool stuff. But anyways, those sorts of methods, stereolithography and selective laser sintering, have been around for quite a while, and they're quite refined. Like at least 20 years, maybe 30. I don't know. But as I said, they played specialized roles. The machinery to actually work with them has historically been extremely expensive, like tens of thousands of dollars or more. And like tens of thousands would be like a good deal for a cheap machine. Mm-hmm. But I mean, these days, a couple years back, there was something called the RepRap project, and they decided to make a less expensive way of doing things and a better way for certain applications, at least. And then they made the RepRap Darwin, which was sort of like the first 3D printer. And the idea was they used a new technology, fused deposition modeling, where you take a spool of plastic filament and you feed it into a hot extruder that melts the plastic and then deposits a very small amount at some given location, and then they can move the extruder head around in a three-dimensional space and deposit plastic wherever they need. And it turns out that technology is orders of magnitude less expensive and very simple to work with and repair if you need. So, that technology essentially brings it down to like the household level. And what they were hoping for is a sort of a symbiosis between people and these sorts of machines, almost the same way that cells use ribosomes to produce various proteins and things. Like everyone could have a bunch of printers to print any little piece of machinery that they needed around the house. And for that ability, since that ability carries some value with it, people would make sure to have a bunch of printers. The issues preventing it from becoming so widespread at the moment are probably that it's just not trivial to use yet. I think they can get it there, but someone starting out, you need to know a whole bunch about mechanical engineering, software stuff, electrical engineering, and you have to work with all these things. And it's a process of, as you're building the printer, you're learning how it works. And that takes a lot of time for some people. So,
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. The technology's out there now, so hopefully it will spread. And I'm hoping to add my own improvements as time goes along.
What kind of... You said that it's getting now down to the household level. How do I want to put this? What is it that makes it so possible now that it can be at the household level?
Well, it's less expensive and it's simpler, as I mentioned. So,
Okay,
but that's it could be even simpler. So that's where it needs to go. And there's groups producing $300 and $200 printers if you know where to look.
Really?
Yeah, like they say that the limit has been 500 for a while. They're going below that. Just one guy I know is working on a project to use servo motors instead of stepper motors, so that you can have active feedback to control the printers. And the servos are half as expensive as stepper motors for a given printer, with just as good resolution, as long as you have all the software side stuff done properly. And the control board, instead of being like $120, is less than $50.
Nice.
Easily, or maybe about 50. Yeah, whatever. Roughly in that. So that'll bring it down from even 200 to 100, and then we're competing with if you've seen the Peachy printer recently, that was interesting. It was a sort of redesign of the whole concept of 3D printing, and they changed a lot of stuff up there. And that's $100. Extremely simple to use.
Wow.
I think that's on Kickstarter right now.
What kind of materials can you use? Is plastic the only one?
Well, plastic's easy, just because you can melt it, and it has that nice glass transition point where it's not fully molten, so it has an extremely high viscosity relative to its surface tension.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you can't print easily with metals, because they melt immediately into a complete liquid, and then they have more surface tension than they have viscosity, sort of, and then the ratio of that is not good. So essentially, when you're trying to extrude stuff, it all beads up. One thing I've been thinking about, I mentioned it at least to the other people who were trying to get a metal 3D printer to work, was maybe making metallic glass, essentially flash cooling it as soon as it comes out of the extruder head. And then, metallic glass has some excellent properties anyway, so there's a lot of reasons that you'd want bulk metallic glass.
This is going to sound kind of weird, but what is the potential to be printed from these? Is Is there only a limited amount of things at this point, or is our imagination up for interpretation?
Well, I mean, it depends. The systems involved in 3D printing are, I mean, there's a lot of nonlinearity in there. Like, and to simplify that, a lot of people, what they do is just use a heated build volume.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, that makes a lot of things easier. But, I mean, in certain geometries, very specific geometries, sometimes even just specific to the print that you're doing at a given time, sometimes the G code messes up very slightly. G code is the thing that the instructions for the printer to print some 3D volume. And essentially, if there's a small error there, then sometimes the plastic's not behaved quite so nice, and that error propagates through the rest of the print, and bad things happen.
Sure.
But I mean, theoretically, you should be able to print any shape.
Which one do I want to ask next? Which question? Okay, I think I'll actually kind of take a step back here. Do you how did you get started in 3D printing? What was your motivation to start here?
Well, I'd heard about it a couple times when I was off in high school, and then when I came to college, we had a makerspace or a hackerspace on campus called the WPI Collab Lab. WPI is just the school I go to, Worcester Polytechnic Institute. Very nice place for engineers, at least. We also have like a brony club if anyone's interested. But, anyways, yeah, the Collab Lab. Like, there's a bunch of kids in there that have been into 3D printers since practically the Darwin RepRap project stuff, and they had all the expertise necessary. So I just asked them a couple questions, made a bill of materials along with some other people. We bought our parts for our printers in bulk, and then we assembled them.
How long did it take to assemble them?
I mean, it only takes like a weekend to assemble it your first time if you're good with Legos or anything. Like, literally what I did, one person had a Prusa Mendel printer already made, and that was the model that I was going to build. So I just sort of looked at their printer and then made my printer based on that. Like, I didn't read the instructions. I probably should have read the instructions. Because then after that, it took a week of calibration.
Oh.
But anyways, yeah, if you know what you're doing, you can make a printer in an afternoon.
Okay. But the way I have it yet to remember, Mike, the instruction manual is nothing more than the
RTFM is very important with 3D printers. Bad things happen when you don't read the manual.
The manufacturer's recommendations. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I kind of want to go a little bit further now. Tell us about how you're involved with 3D printing now and where you hope to go with it.
Well, at the moment, I've been swamped with classes and stuff, but when I'm not swamped, typically, I mean, I have this like business started up, Futuralization, and the idea there is, I mean, it's not specifically a 3D printing business, but what I want to do is actually sort of like Elon Musk, find good technologies and develop them to the point where they're really profitable. And I had a couple ideas for 3D printers, and even just for 3D printer extruders, because like the cheapest 3D printer extruder right now is like $50. That's unnecessary. You could like make them out of magnesium oxide, hot pressed, and then have like a $5 really nice quality extruder nozzle for like, I mean, it's good. It's a lot better that way. It's competitive.
Exactly.
But yeah, so I mean, the other idea was, have you seen? Probably not, I guess. There's something called a delta printer. It's non-Cartesian, so it's essentially It has 3 z-axes, each with a sort of an arm that's allowed to rotate a bit. And then the position along the 3 z-axes determines the position of the extruder head in 3 dimensions. So, I mean, all they have to do is map a Cartesian space into your weird delta space, and while you're printing, and then it prints perfectly well with 3 z-axes. And for a lot of things, that's quite nice. But I wanted to take that a step further. I had this idea where you have, instead of 3 z-axes that actuate up and down, you have 3 points that determine. Essentially, it's a triangulation. You have 3 arms that all meet at the extruder head, and the only thing they do is they actuate in and out, and they're allowed around the points, at least, that they're attached to. They're allowed to rotate freely. So all of the angles and everything are determined by the lengths. So very simple method, and quite sturdy as well. And also, hopefully, that method will be as light as possible. Anyways, making it as light as possible is to keep the resonant frequencies of the system high, so that the amplitudes are low, so that your print resolution is nice and high. It's a similar.
Words, you get a clean print.
Yeah, it's a similar but opposite solution to something some people at Harvard were working at. They actually have this amazing, like, huge, like 5-ton printer.
Jeez. With
these axes that are levitated on air bearings and magnetically dampened and crazy stuff. And this thing, because it's so heavy, the resonant frequencies are actually so low that, I mean, they don't have to worry about them over any really short distance almost. I mean, it's as if the axes are flat relative to some 5 nanometer space, which is actually their resolution. Roughly, like they can control the print head to within 5 nanometers. I mean, 5 nanometer position control. Their actual print head is 100 nanometers across, because I mean they just can't get it any smaller without mechanical failure happening.
But still, that's pretty darn precise when you think about it.
It is impressive.
Go ahead.
They could place transistors with that machine.
Now that
you can make silicon-based life, maybe.
I've heard you mention that before. How do these printers do just that? Create this borderline silicon-based life that you have spoken about.
Well, I mean, currently, 3D printers are more analogous to the ribosome, as I mentioned earlier. Like, living things use them to produce stuff that's useful to them. Mm-hmm. But at some point, I mean, there's a lot of problems that need to be figured out first. Like, if you had a 5-ton printer print out another 5-ton printer, that's going to take a long time with 5 nanometer position control and stuff.
But it's still... go ahead.
So, I don't know. There's some problems that need to be worked out in general.
But in essence, the machine can create parts for itself.
Yes.
And eventually there's a potential that it could become aware of that.
Maybe not that to begin with, but the idea is at some point you're going to approach a system that can produce all of the parts that it needs, including the electrical components, and not be so large that it takes a ridiculous amount of time.
Okay.
And if it can produce all of its parts, because I mean, open source printers, they can produce their own frame. but they can't reproduce their electrical components.
Which is what would be needed.
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of the science, can you tell us a little more in detail about the science behind 3D printing? You know, what's all involved in it?
Where to begin? Jeez. Well, essentially, you have your 3D file, and that's transferred usually in an STL format or an object format.
Okay.
Compatible with a lot of softwares. And they sort of... you can take that file and sort of make a space-filling curve.
And a solid object, basically.
Yeah, and that space-filling curve essentially traces out the path that the extruder is supposed to take when printing. I don't know. A bit of
Then, my question is what kind of science is involved in it? You mentioned before there's engineering, there's computer science, that kind of stuff. What would one need to operate one?
I mean, not much.
Oh, really?
Technically, there's the RefRap wiki, and all the information you need is there. And you could learn it by trial and error, essentially.
Which
you might not understand the underlying principles, but you'll figure it out. That's how people usually learn things. There's a difference by learning the theory behind stuff and learning in practice. You can learn the theory behind metallurgy, or you can become a blacksmith and actually do all that stuff. Sort of.
Pretty much. That
makes sense?
It makes sense to me, and I think that pretty much hits the nail on the head. There's a difference between the theoretical and the practical, is what you're saying.
Yeah. And that's really the only way that 3D printers are going to be able to get into general public use.
Something I want to know. You mentioned something about... Did we ever mention anything about copyrights and the like?
Oh, that's going to be messy. I don't know. I'm not very good with the legal system there.
Okay. I was just curious if you had any insight on that.
Well, it's going to clash with the current system the same way that you can just copy a piece of music or an image and put it anywhere. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. What about... Now I kind of want to shift gears a little bit and talk about 3D printing in regards to the pony phenomenon. So where do I want to begin? Give us a history or a short summary of 3D printing in the brony community, please.
Well, starting out a long time ago, probably a bunch of you are following them on DeviantArt, but we'll start with KP Shadow Squirrel, who I believe made one of the first set of SFM ponies. And the models for Source Filmmaker are compatible with Blender, which is compatible with 3D printing. So people started printing out KP Shadow Squirrel's models. And that's the beginning of it. Then there's Claude Nyasu and Rabbit Peep on DeviantArt. And they were those people who were 3D printing stuff at LPU when stuff went bad, but they still made a profit because there was such a high demand.
Sure.
Of course, I don't know. Their methods they use a lot of post-processing.
Post-processing?
Essentially, you have your print that comes out, and it's just plastic.
Huh.
And then, what they do is they machine the surface of it, they smooth it out,
with like acetone vapor polishing, and then they like paint it and stuff, make it look real nice. Because I mean, that's what people expect from 3D prints ever since Shapeways started out.
Mm-hmm.
Like perfect surface quality and like color images and strong parts. And they have the strong parts because they use ABS plastic. But
like the other stuff with open source printers is difficult to do right now. There was one group that had a technology that I think can be used for that. I'm trying to get in contact with them. I saw their stuff at Maker Faire, actually. They had like a system where you essentially take some 3D model that's color and everything, and you split it into 2D color segments, and you print each of those out on a little clear piece of plastic. And you sort of you glue them together with epoxy, and you get a block with a 3D object in it with all this clear plastic around it. And that's getting there. But essentially, what they would have to do now is take some clear plastic and like 3D print each layer, and then print normally with like a 2D printer on top of each 3D printed layer to infuse each layer with like color.
Okay.
So it's possible, and I'm sure sooner or later we'll see some open source, inexpensive color printers, but I don't think we're there just at the moment. But I mean, I'm keeping my eye out for that. If no one else works on it, I'm going to try doing that.
I like your I like your enthusiasm and your vision. I really do. Tell us, how do I want to word this? How has the 3D brony community been as of recent?
Oh yeah, since what happened with Shapeways happened.
Yep.
Can
Can you give us a bit of a background on that? What happened to Shapeways, and then from there?
Well, essentially, Shapeways got an email from Hasbro, pretty much a cease and desist sort of thing. Because, I mean, they had Octavia and Final Scratch from Hash Brony or something. Yeah, Hash Brony. And that's another guy in the 3D printing community and stuff. But anyways, he had those models up there, and they wanted to, I mean, they had them like on the front page almost of Shapeways, and Hasbro was like, no, that's not good. So they sort of, and they were selling a lot of them, so that's an issue. So they stopped being able to do that because they got that message. And then everyone that was using Shapeways to print out ponies, because like it's so much easier than making a color 3D printer yourself. All those people had a lot of trouble. They had to find other sites that offer that. But they're still out there if you know where to look.
Right.
There's a bunch of other companies. And I mean, a surprising amounts of people weren't fazed by that. I took a step back and reevaluated, because when that happened, I was about to start like selling color prints and stuff on a homemade printer that I made. And then I was like, oh, that's not too good. So I went like, yeah. I decided to just take a step back for a minute. And at the moment, I'm not printing any, but I was hoping to get in contact with like Hasbro or maybe someone, if I can get a license. If then I can print stuff for people
and start selling legally.
Yeah.
Wow. Are you?
It's a big if, though.
What's the likelihood of that happening?
I have no idea. Not a clue.
But anyways, I'll at least give it a shot.
Sure.
Yeah, what else? So, yeah, after the Shapeways stuff, I was like, everyone's all freaking out about this. There's all this drama. You know what? I'm going to make this. I was talking to another 3D printing brony, uncommented, and we were like, let's make a site for the 3D printing bronies in the community. And we made it, and there's a lot of people there now. So
Sure.
anyone with a 3D printer, pretty much, who's a brony.
Impressive.
And that took off. Yeah.
How so? How is it? Has it taken off more than you'd hoped? Less than you'd hoped? About the same?
Just about. I mean, it got on it probably like Reddit and a few other places, and there was a big spike in activity, but then interest died off a bit. I mean, 3D printing is not the only thing in the community. I'm sure people's attention is shared with many other things. But yeah, I mean, all the 3D printing bronies are there. We talk occasionally, and it's fun.
Well, it is 4 o'clock, so it's time to open up audience questions. But before I do that, I do have one more question for you, Mike, and I probably will have others to ask during this time, but while they're getting theirs in,
All right.
what are some other MLP-related activities that you do within the fandom?
Not too much. I take part in a small blog called Discord's Domain, which, I mean, it's a fun little place. We have a very small, tight-knit community. I mean, we try to post things regularly, but really what I'd like to try is to make some programs that do all that stuff automatically. More on that coming eventually. Just keep an eye out.
Keeping that
We'll
on
see.
the hush-hush right now?
I mean, the issue is I got to see what sort of program will work. We might make a web page. We might make just like a small browser add-on sort of thing. Ultimately, it will hopefully benefit not just the brony community, but I mean anyone who wants to use the stuff. It'll save them tons of time internet browsing.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's just that we're trying to augment the site by adding that sort of program, and then making the site itself just more a hangout spot where we sort of iteratively improve on that program, and the program itself brings in all the news and stuff.
Cool.
Automatically, almost. Sort of.
All right, let's get started
We'll go
with this.
into-
Huh?
I won't go into much more on that now, but yeah.
Understood. Matt the Shadow Man asks, what's the most unusual thing you have ever printed in 3D? You know, used a 3D printer for?
Well, this isn't a story for me, but just on campus, like, there was a group of kids who printed like this egg holder thing. I'm not exactly sure what it was supposed to be. And then, I mean, they were really excited because it was the first time they'd got their printer working. So they ran over to one of their classes and one of their professors. And they were like, Professor, look what I printed out. And then he's like, is that an alien butt plug? And everyone in the class laughed for like minutes. We have a good time in this college.
It sounds like it. Alien
It's,
butt plug.
It hardly looked like that. Funny teacher.
He
But
sounds like
anyways, yeah. I mean, I haven't printed much too out of the ordinary, but let's see if I can think of a thing. A triple gear. If you go on Thingiverse, which is a site, it's like a repository of 3D images and 3D models for 3D printing specifically. There's this one guy called Henry Seg, who's like a mathematician, and he made this model of three gears interwoven that's turned around each other, and it's quite interesting. And I mean, when you first print it, like you take a look at it, you take a close look, and you're like, how does this even work? Like, I can't even imagine how it meshes. And then, I mean, it takes a minute to visualize even. But yeah, the triple gear from Henry Seg on Thingiverse was quite odd.
Okay. Pokey asks, what's your take on printing guns?
Oh boy, not that.
All right, well,
Well, I mean,
if you don't want to answer it, that's
No, I
fine.
mean,
You can skip it.
it's not that I don't want to answer that. It's just everyone always brings that up. I mean, if a crazy person wants to get a gun, they'll find a way. But like with 3D printers, if someone prints a weapon, you can print a shield. You know what I mean?
That's a good way of putting it.
It's a level playing field as long as you know how to work the technology as well.
Good way of putting it.
I mean, same thing almost with the internet and stuff. Like hackers, it's not a level playing field because there are people that go out of their way to learn all this stuff, and then the average person might not know as much. I mean, with any technology, the best way to level that playing field is to make sure you learn. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Keep up to date. That's really the only way.
I have no clue. Well, maybe you have an idea here. Moonview asks, do you think they should expand on zebra culture? I'm assuming this is in the show.
Oh. Huh. Maybe, yeah. That would be interesting. I remember once I wanted to write a fanfic. I decided against it because I realized no one would understand what the heck I was talking about. But essentially, a fanfic where the whole like Everfree Forest where Zecora was a essentially a Grey Goo scenario where like some alien species dropped some von Neumann probes, essentially microscopic von Neumann probes, onto the surface, and they sort of populated the area and grew all the plants and everything, and like they were spreading out across the planet, and like I was going to have the zebras come into that story at some point to at least play a part
Within the story.
depending on how it really fit into the thing. But I mean, as an origin story for the Everfree Forest, I still haven't found anything in the show that like prevents that from being the case. In fact, it makes a lot of sense in terms of the show, like how nature works differently there, as if it's like magically shielded from magic.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no magic is allowed in, so the moon and the sun behave naturally or something. And then that would explain what the green dust was that Zecora had in that one episode. It was actually von Neumann probes, like intelligent microscopic organisms having fun along with Zecora for the holiday. I don't know.
Well, I actually like that idea. We'll be seeing it here in another week, and I think I'm going to go with that. They're little von Neumann probes. Having fun
One
with
heck of a
Zecora.
headcanon.
Huh?
One heck of a headcanon.
Yeah, no kidding. Not only that, but it's just they don't have to be evil. They can have some fun, as you put it.
Exactly.
Where were we? Okay. Twilight is Magic asks, "Hi, Mike, from a fellow DD veteran. What's your most ambitious 3D model you've printed yet, and what's the most complex one you've printed yet?"
Again, that
There's
would
some
have
more
to.
to this, but I'll let you answer these first.
Again, that would have to be the triple gear. That's quite ambitious because, like, you have to have all the parts toleranced really tightly, but you also don't want all the plastic sort of sticking together. You don't want the gears sticking together when they're being made.
Mhm.
And also, if you print them hollow, then I mean, they're sort of delicate. So when you're trying, if they do get stuck together, it's really difficult to get them unstuck without breaking the actual gears. It's a tricky print. Another interesting one was I printed out a model Celestia that was like as big as my print bed, and it was actually a little
Lord.
bit. It was bigger actually. Like a piece was sticking off. Well, actually, it wasn't sticking off. What ends up happening on the printer is it won't go past its limits, so it ends up like not moving in the y-axis, but still moving in the x-axis. So the horn was like bent like 45 degrees. And then, I mean, it's a thermoplastic, so you just bend it right back into place with a hot glue gun or something. But yeah.
And he also asks, what is the most complex one you're currently aspiring to do?
Well, there was a program I wanted to work on that shares a lot with a board design program called Eagle.
Mhm.
And Eagle is essentially, it makes a computer chip. It takes all the integrated circuits and a bunch of resistors and capacitors, and it attaches them all together. It figures out the best way to do that, or at least a near optimal way. And I wanted to expand that to 3D printing, because I mean, there's much more you can do with that in 3D printing.
Mhm.
You can make three-dimensional chunks of computational material, and I mean, once I make that, I was going to see if I could go to those Harvard folks with the really high-res printer and see if I can just print a silicon chunk of stuff that does computation. It's a bit ambitious, though, and I don't see it happening anytime soon. But
Mhm.
I aspire to print that. That would be awesome.
That would be awesome. And one, no, we're moving on.
Anyways.
Iwa asks, what?
Oh, nothing.
Iwa asks, do you consider 3D art to still fit the show and character style, or do you feel it's quite distinct due to it being in an extra dimension?
Well, yeah, I mean, technically the show is sort of 2.5D. It's like a 3D volume projected onto a 2D flat surface. Like, there's been rotations around characters in the show and whatever.
Mhm.
So there's a 3D-esque-ness to it. The source filmmaker ponies captured pretty well. But, I mean, they are unique. They don't have, for example, an outline around them. But yeah, I mean, you're going to have distinctions, I think. I'm not sure the show you can perfectly match it up, especially because with a lot of the frames that they've made, if you rotate around a character in MLP, you're not going to get a consistent 3D shape. It doesn't translate into 3D perfectly.
Which would make sense, given the circumstances.
Yeah. Although it would be fascinating if they put that much thought into it when designing the things. Maybe they did. It's just a little bit off. Just
Sure.
a little. Any other?
Go ahead.
No? You first.
I was just going to move on to the next question.
Okay.
First, I have to ask you this one, though. Do you play D&D?
There is a gaming club at my college, and I've been meaning to play some Dungeons and Dragons with them.
Okay,
Um,
then, go ahead.
But not yet. I know my father used to play Dungeons and Dragons, and when my siblings and I were young, we would sort of play D&D,
Mhm.
but with fewer rules and more fun.
Yeah.
So like, you'd pretty much make everything up as you went instead of going by the Dungeon Master's book or whatever. It ended up almost like Adventure Time episodes. I feel like that's what they do. They play D&D and then they make it into an episode the next day.
You weren't playing. All I can get are Dexter's Lab flashbacks now. But the reason I ask that question is because Moonview asks this question: what
Mhm.
type of D&D character do you roll as?
Ooh. I don't know. Just for the sake of funnies, I'm a mage. But let's see. Oh, I found something I forgot to mention earlier. The Collab Lab, a project from there a couple years back, actually broke some world records recently. Scout Transatlantic. They're like maybe, I don't know, they're approaching midway through the Atlantic, and they made this little autonomous boat.
Mhm.
Neat stuff. Too bad I forgot.
Do you have a link for the chat?
Oh yeah, I'll get it.
Feel free to post stuff in chat so long as it isn't offensive.
Yeah. So I mean, I've got this place where you can. Oh wait, where did the chat go? There it is. I'll just bring Skype over where the chat is, because simpler that way. Anyways, yeah. You can go look at them on that link there, and essentially, it's like a live tracking website thing. Pretty interesting.
Alex M asks, if you could have access to any fictional item, which item would it be?
Fictional. Let me think about that one for a sec.
Okay. Get back to it, or should I wait?
Yeah, I think I'll think about that as we move on to the next question.
Okay. And these next ones are by Mr. Ben, and these are his ones he always asks every interview, and bless him for it. What is your favorite ice cream flavor?
Ooh. Once again, it depends on my mood. I don't like picking favorites. I mean, I just don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I like strawberry, I like pistachio, I like cake batter, I like chocolate, I like vanilla, everything.
Ooh, cake batter. That is so good.
It's good stuff.
If you could bend any two of the classical four elements, that is fire, air, earth, and water, which two would they be?
Well, I mean, fire, because it appears to be non-conservative in terms of energy. So you can just produce as much energy as you want. And then maybe water, because, heck, water's much more amazing than people know. Like,
I was just going to say, you look at the properties of it, and it's an amazing substance.
oh yeah. Let's see. Ooh, you know what? Fictional object, maybe a lightsaber. Those are pretty interesting. Although, I mean, that article recently about scientists creating something like a lightsaber, that's a terrible analogy. Why does the media always draw such terrible analogies?
It's the
Literally,
media,
it's-
Mike. You should know that.
Fair enough. But anyways, yeah. Like, literally, it's photons passing through a piece of supercooled Rydberg matter. And, I mean, the photons are mediated through the piece of matter as, like, interactions between, like, cesium or rubidium atoms or whatever. And, like, it's the electrical interactions between those atoms that propagate the light through the material. And that's why, because they're represented by the motion of the atoms, that's why the photons slow down, sort of. Well, I mean, not necessarily.
that's a bad analogy too, but I mean, it's closer to what's going on there.
Mhm.
And I mean, what's really interesting about that isn't that you can use it as like a lightsaber, because you can't. Like, it's only solid light, sort of, within some other material already. So, like, you can't just have air and that going on. But maybe you can make photonic transistors with such a system if you can get light to interact. Because, I mean, that's what transistors are. Like, they're two electrical signals interacting.
Well,
Like-
hence the name, for crying out loud.
Yeah. But yeah, a photonic transistor, that would be cool.
One wonders. That sounds like the kind of thing that sounds like some kind of Nobel Prize winning type of thing. A photon transistor.
I believe there are ways people have done it, but like it's all under very specific conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Something about an inverse Woodpile photonic crystal. I don't remember exactly. And I guess this one's under very specific conditions too. It has to be supercooled. It has to be Rydberg matter. So maybe that's not much easier.
I can't imagine it is.
Yeah. But like the interesting thing is, at least for quantum computers, the reason quantum computers these days sort of suck, first of all, there's specifically adiabatic quantum computers, which some people don't even consider to be quantum computers. But also, if you store quantum bits in atoms, atoms interact a lot with their surroundings. Photons do not.
Mm-mm.
So, I mean, while in transit, you could store quantum information very easily in photons. In fact, I believe there's one technology that's been patented for, what is it? Like sending fiber optical signals, right? And they actually have some way of sending quantum information in photons down those, and it's much more secure than other ways. And then, I mean, then you have your quantum information in that photon. It doesn't interact with anything while it's in transit, and when it reaches the place where it's supposed to interact, then it interacts strongly because you have the Rydberg matter there. And then, I mean, not only could you have a photonic computer, but you could also have some sort of quantum stuff going on, mediating that interaction. Anyways.
I was going to say, next question. In your uniform, subjective view, what is the meaning of life?
Well, I mean, I usually define that in terms of like how life started on this planet. I mean, you essentially have a universe where, I mean, matter and energy and stuff are like interacting and whatever. And then,
Interchangeable.
yeah, but not easily.
I didn't
Not
say,
easy.
just because it isn't easy doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Just because but because it isn't easy means that those interactions are less frequent by a large margin.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, common interactions like electrostatic forces and whatever else. I mean, you've got all these atoms interacting, and then suddenly what starts to happen is some emergent behaviors, information storage that's beyond just crystal growth. And then, I mean, life fundamentally is information that is mimetic relative to our universe. And sort of from that standpoint, you can make the claim, at least, I mean, maybe not from a philosophical standpoint, but from a sort of scientific standpoint, you can sort of say that life's purpose is to keep itself going, sort of. I mean, we're no different than the von Neumann machines in that fanfic I would have written in that respect. Like, you send those out of some dying area of the universe to find some source of energy to spread again. And I mean, well, I mean, my roommate put it best. the universe, after some point, may become undefined behavior. Essentially, the natural laws of our universe, which should describe like everything, might stop doing so simply because there's so much information stored in life and stuff that life can start manipulating things in ways that would change the probabilities that things would occur. It's sort of like a theory of dark matter, a silly one that I came up with a while back, that essentially you can imagine the dark matter is actually tons and tons of like stars all in Dyson spheres by some like Kardashev 4 level species, like something that's within every reach of the visible universe that's spread everywhere. And if some form of life could spread that far and dome so many stars within Dyson spheres so that you couldn't see them, that would explain the strange gravitational stuff going on with dark matter.
In essence, it's a higher form of life that's spread out across, as you put it, the known visible universe.
Well, not exactly, but
Okay.
I mean, it's a start. I mean, I'm not being perfectly clear there, but it's late in the day. But yeah, sort of like life has the potential to fundamentally change our universe.
In essence, we could change the universe as we see it.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
But I mean, that's easier, just shifting your perspective subjectively, like religious people do.
But you get my point.
Yes.
Moonview asks, do you have any facial hair?
Not much.
Twilight is Magic asks, how's the progress with the grand program going?
Slow. There's so much school and things. It's tough to do school while running a business, while programming.
Moonview asks, favorite genre of music?
Ooh, music. Again, I don't pick favorites. However, I remember on multiple occasions, there's just something that meshes between 3D printers and dubstep. Like, I mean, if you go somewhere on campus and you bring your 3D printer and you start printing some stuff, like some people just walk over with a boombox that's playing dubstep, and then suddenly you're surrounded by a crowd of interested people. It's as if it turns something on in their brains that it's like, oh my gosh, machinery.
I've never had it been put that way before.
It's very weird. Like, even I brought a printer to what was it? That Brony convention, BronyCon earlier this year, and like someone started like breakdancing next to where I was 3D printing, and like everyone who noticed the breakdancing, like almost immediately after, came over to the printer, and I mean they were doing dubstep, so like I don't know what it is.
What
I
if
don't
it's
know.
the same rhythmic, the kind of rhythmic pattern? Look
Maybe.
at dubstep songs and then look at the rhythmic pattern of, say, even something as basic as hammering. So
True.
it's just a thought. It's just a hypothesis.
Anyway, it's just a weird, strange connection there.
No, not asking that. You've already asked it. Already asked that. Mr. Ben asks, have you ever printed anything else Have you ever printed anything else for another fandom outside of MLP?
I believe one guy asked me to make a TF2 hat for him, 3D printed. Unfortunately, I haven't had the time to actually make that yet, but I will soon, hopefully, if he still wants me to do that.
Fair enough.
And then creepers, stuff for Minecraft.
Yeah, that hissing noise.
Star Trek badges. I guess there's a lot of stuff, yeah. Not all that comes to mind immediately. I mean, you could always just ask me afterward on my DeviantArt thing.
There are a few other things I want to hit before we wrap this up, but okay. Next question or what?
Sure.
Oh,
Next question.
Matt the Shadow Man asks, is the cost of the other printing materials needed for a 3D printer expensive? How much would it cost to, say, print a run of 10 or 12 pony figures?
10 or 12. I mean, per pony, it's probably around $1 or $2 of plastic at most. The issue, though, is for a good, nice, high-quality, high-resolution print, it might take 4 hours-ish. So, I mean, in terms of money, not much, but in terms of time, potentially a lot. Unless you can make your 3D printer very well automated, which is a problem with some of the people who get into 3D printing at first. Essentially, they have to they build some stuff a little strange, and then they have to essentially watch their print as it's printing to make sure nothing fails. And I mean, you don't want to be sitting there watching something for 5 hours as it prints. Although, I mean, I do find there is something hypnotic about just watching a 3D print. I mean, have you guys seen there's tons of videos on YouTube of just people recording their 3D prints as they're printing. It's hilarious.
How many views do they get?
A decent amount, some of them. I don't exactly remember. I don't go on that part of YouTube too often.
Fair enough.
It's right next door to the weird part of YouTube.
That weird part. Here's a good one. Nittany Discord asks, do you feel this technology will be integrated or modified to print body parts for transplants?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's on its way. The only real issue there is you got to find a good way of printing capillaries and structures that are on a very small scale. Mm-hmm. And that's just, you get that with higher print resolution. And then the other thing is you got to figure out how to make sure that the right biomarkers are in the right place in your organ that you're printing or in your tissue that you're printing, so that the right cells know where to go. You sort of. So typically, you'll print a scaffold for an organ in a material called PLA, which is corn-derived and biodegradable, biocompatible. I'm not sure if food safe. I think if you tried to cook with it, it would melt, and then you could probably eat it. But I mean, all it is lactic acid in polymerized form in long chains. So it's a plastic, but I mean,
but
you can compost it and stuff.
A biological plastic, basically.
Essentially, yes.
Wow.
So you use that stuff to make a scaffold for an organ, and I mean that's literally PLA is what they use for open source printing. So you can get some open source printer and print your own organ scaffold right now. It's that easy. But I mean, yeah, getting the biomarkers for the cells and everything in the right place, and getting small structures to form, and all those other tricky little bits that come with growing an organ from scratch. I mean, on the 3D printing side, we have it figured out. On the biology side, they're still working.
Mhm.
It's not an easy problem, but it will happen. I think they're getting closer and closer to it.
That's cool. I love this kind of stuff.
I mean, right when I went to visit Harvard and saw that awesome printer they had, they also have another printing lab that's literally using Ultra machines and MakerBots and things to print scaffolds. Literally, just the open source stuff. Well, at least Ultra Machine is no Ultimaker. Ultra Machine is different than Ultimaker, and frankly, Ultimaker I think is better than MakerBot. But MakerBot gets all the news headlines, whatever.
Why is that so?
They have better marketing, I think.
Okay, that would do it.
Yep. There's the technical side of things, and then there's the business side of things. And I've seen a lot of excellent engineers start up small 3D printing companies just to fail because they're really not used to the business side of things. It's unfortunate.
Which would make sense in
Yeah.
some aspects.
Although, I mean, I expect better from engineers. They can do math. That means they can do business.
Exactly. That's
Well, in broad terms, there's a little more detail there, perhaps. A little bit meaning a lot more. It's not easy to run a business, no.
no, it is.
But it it should be doable. Should be.
Well, if it was an absolute, then, well, I'm just starting to ramble now. I'm sorry, Mike.
No problem.
Um,
For science, I shall print myself a sun. What's this
Getting
comment
kind
here?
we're getting kind of close to the crunch time, so I'm going to be a little more selective with the questions.
hmm
Retro Cheerily asks, what was the best Season 2 pony song?
Oh, God, what? I haven't seen Season 2 in so long. I've been so busy. I want to watch Season 2 sometime. I never have the time to actually... let's see.
You've got...
Smile, perhaps?
Go ahead.
It's nice. It's upbeat
Which one?
for Season 2. That Smile was in Season 2, right?
Yep. Smile, smile, smile.
All right.
All right.
I guess. Huh. Anyways, let's see if I can find any other cool things I forgot to mention besides the autonomous boat that's going across the Atlantic.
Okay.
Oh yeah, the Harvard lab. They're called, if anyone's curious, the Lewis Research Group at Harvard. Yeah. What else? Oh yeah. Besides the collab lab in my local area, another makerspace opened up recently called Technocopia.
Ooh.
They're really cool. That was where they're doing the research with the servo motors to bring down the price of 3D printers and things, and bring up the accuracy a little, perhaps. So that's really cool stuff that's going on. And then 3D printing bronies, DeviantArt stuff. Mentioned that.
I was going to say, can you tell us a little bit about the 3D Printing Bronies group on DA? Kind of just a shameless plug, if anything.
Well, I mean, it's got Hashbro from the whole Shapeways problems. It's got Vidal Chris, who was also on Shapeways and moved over to Sculptio. It's got Claude Niasu and Rabid Peep. It's got Uncommented. It's got me. It's got Calpain, actually.
Really?
Hooray. He likes science.
Post a link to it in the chat.
Sure. Just a minute. Anyways, what else did I see recently in 3D printing? Maybe some stuff I saw at Shapeways. There were some people trying to do a metal printer. Trying. It's difficult. They'll get there. Although I don't think they're going to get extreme resolution or anything. But we'll see. We'll see what they can do.
Well, the technology just might not be there yet.
Yeah,
That might be the biggest issue at this time.
got the 3D printing Brony's DeviantArt thing up there.
Perfect.
Perfect. Yeah.
Join him, folks. Join him.
It's fun. It's a bit quiet at the moment. But I mean, as soon as I can get something cool done, I'll post it.
Okay, cool.
Mhm.
Want another question, or did you have a point you wanted to make? Some other point you wanted to make?
Well, one cool thing I think people should, at least someone's got to try this. I found this alloy that's kind of viscous when it's molten, but still conductive. So you should be able to print circuits out of it. And I was going to give that a try eventually.
What's the alloy?
It's the stuff that you make, what is it? Pipe organs out of. Supposedly, it behaves quite viscous compared to other metals.
Okay.
So you might be able to print using FDM with that.
Okay, that makes sense.
Anyways, yeah. I mean, there's tons of cool ideas to be implemented, and I mean, 3D printing. I mean, there's just a lot to look for soon. There's a lot on the horizon. Keep your eye out. It's a fascinating field.
And you want to be on that edge.
Certainly.
Definitely.
Oh, one cool thing. I mean, I mentioned I was at Maker Faire. Perhaps I could mention a couple of the things I saw there.
Sure, go ahead.
There was one group that made. I don't know if anyone here is familiar with quadrotors. It's like a helicopter, but with four propellers.
Okay, yes.
So what they did was they took a whole bunch of like RC helicopters, relatively large ones, and they sort of hackishly, well, not hackishly actually, they had some carbon fiber in there that was pretty cool. But yeah, they put them together, and they made this gigantic quadrotor that was like more than a meter across, and like they could supposedly make it fly around a given track, around a sort of a home location where it flies to recharge, and then it can fly around to that area and sort of patrol the area. The giant quadrotor patrol thingamajig. Very efficient because supposedly pre-made RC helicopters are quite nice quality. And I don't know. What else? There was a company that started up recently, Craftworks. Much nicer than Shapeways, I think. They were able to get 9-micron layer height on some of their prints. Not as good as what Harvard's doing, but Harvard's thing is like experimental and extremely expensive printer and stuff.
And of course, they have the money for it.
Yeah, I suppose. But yeah, 9-micron layer height. You can literally get 9-micron layer height. And they were making, if I remember correctly, engine parts for planes, for GE. And this is just a year after I went to a tour of a GE plant. And they were like, I don't think 3D printers will ever be able to print the parts because they need resolution that's higher than 20 microns. And now they have 9 microns. So
Look at that.
they didn't see that coming. It's starting to be like computers, you know? Like they make predictions and then it goes way past what the predictions can say.
Isn't it funny how that works?
Oh yeah.
You know, Bill Gates said we would never need more than, 64 megabits of storage? Or something like that? Yeah, right.
Yeah. It all depends on what you want to be able to do. But literally, they have enough resolution to make engines for airplanes. I mean, mind-blowing.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because, like, the differential equation, the modeling that they use for those engines, like, the internal behaviors of the engines can be thrown like way off by just slight roughnesses and surface features and whatever else. So like the fact that they can get quality parts for that process with an extremely complex geometry, which 3D printers are good at anyway. I mean, that's just astounding. Just
That's technology at work.
like literally the stuff in that engine, like the gas air mixture goes to temperatures way higher than the melting point of any of the metals involved in that engine. So they have to get the airflow perfect such that none of the heat from that gas gets transferred, or as little as possible of that heat gets transferred into the metal. Otherwise, the inside of the engine would simply melt apart.
And, well, yeah.
I mean, but they did a good job of explaining engines. I mean, fascinating the methods that they use to build them. Even like they machine all of their parts without touching them, not with lasers, but with beams of electrons and little things that arc plasma into the titanium and ionize it into a gas. So there's no mechanical forces placed on any of the parts as they're being made. So they can be like monocrystalline titanium or something. And they just drill a hole through that with electricity.
Wow, that's hard, that's just hard to believe. Drilling without mechanics.
Well, I mean, the idea is it's ablation, like when you're coming into the atmosphere and you're the like shuttle or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like the surface, depending on what heat shield you're using, ablates away. It turns into a plasma or a gas and flies off in some other direction. That's exactly what the same technique they're using here. They're just heating it up so much that it flies apart.
But that's still, there has to be I'm mostly interested in the precision of it. It's doing all of that because a drill, I can only imagine, would, a mechanical drill would create a lot of imperfections, and to the best of our abilities would still create some sort of statistically significant issue with it. But by doing this, these electron beam drills, or the arc plasma, I'm sorry, doing that reduces a lot
for
of that.
Drilling. The electron beams are for welding, like 20 micron, like tiny little welding lines along the surface of all these things that you cannot even see.
Mm-hmm.
Like it welds the titanium along this tiny little, amazingly small area. It only melts the tiniest amount of it.
Which is impressive from not only just from that standpoint, but in terms of, again, a perfection, not a precision standpoint.
Yeah, man, the ways they make engines are incredible for airplanes. And I mean, but still, when they make like blade discs and stuff and the really complex geometry parts, like literally 3D printers are more economical than the methods they're currently using.
Wow.
So I mean, this in this one area, like 3D printers can compete with the industrial methods that are being used. So awesome.
Definitely. So then it begs this question: where do you see 3D printers going? We might have already asked and answered this, but I'll ask it again if so.
Well, could go one of two ways. If we can make some mechanical system that's completely self-replicating, it would have to store its own data. It would have to be able to print in a semiconductor, an insulator, and a conductor. Mm-hmm. And it would have to be able to manipulate all the parts that it makes in order to actually create a copy of itself, or maybe create a copy internally like a mammal, and then like take it out of itself, and then like expand it out some way. I don't know exactly what the method will be, but I mean, it's doable. And I mean, if we can create something that's completely self-replicating, then it becomes almost a trivial thing. You just let those things live on our planet like the rest of us, like some organism, and then you essentially farm them almost.
Huh.
And I mean, theoretically, they'd be silicon-based and metal-based instead of carbon-based. So they wouldn't compete with our ecosystem for material. Instead, you just take a bunch of rocks, crush them up, and as long as they have the right amount of elements and things in them, I mean, you can create more. There's a lot of specifics that are glossed over there. There's a lot that needs to be worked on before that's possible. But if we can get there, then making 3D printers commonplace in like every household is trivial. It'll happen on its own. Just like people have pets currently.
Mhm.
Like, it'll be useful to have a 3D printer around. So, but another way, which I see it going in for the short term, is the open source 3D printers have a shot at getting to like $100 prices, prices the average person would pay for before the actual big companies do.
Sure.
And if they can get there, and this is a bigger if, unfortunately, if they can make it accessible to the average person, maybe I'll work on that. Because someone needs to do that. But if they can make it accessible to the average person and within people's within people's budgets, then it'll spread like iPhones, or smartphones or whatever.
Which would
And
be an
since it's
interesting
open
idea.
source, I guess it would spread more like, since it's open source, it would spread more like Linux. Like, you're going to have the Linux printers, sort of, and then you're going to have the companies, once they get down to the same prices, you're going to have the equivalent of Macintosh and Windows popping up. You know what I mean?
Yes. Basically, as you said, you have your Linux side, which is going to have this small niche of people, but eventually it'll spread to, as you put it, a Windows Mac populace, much larger, broader.
Yeah, sort of like that. Unless the Linux people can get their system to be more easily understood by the average person without having to learn command line stuff and all this whatever else.
Which I suppose would be kind of roughly the same thing, but
I
get what you mean.
It would be the open source people doing it instead of the private companies.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it would be nicer if the open source people could do that first, because from a practical standpoint, if the closed source people get to it first, I mean, I feel like they're going to treat it like 2D printers. Make printing materials extremely expensive, make most of the stuff really easy to do, but then like put in stuff that protects against copyright infringement, or actually, I mean, normal computers don't really have that. So maybe not that. Maybe they just won't be able to control that. But, I don't know. I feel like it would be more restrictive in a way. They'll take away some of the capabilities that the open source movement is working on simply because they cannot be perfected.
Sure.
Like the open source community's methods for support material with the same material that you're printing with, so that you can print the support material and your print with only one print head instead of two. And like the method of bridging gaps instead of using support material under those, which leaves some imperfections, but then you can print crazy geometries without any support material, just printing through straight, like through the air.
Wow.
Like I remember I went to IBM before I went to BronyCon. I had to wait for a carpool of people. Well, mostly just my dad and I. But yeah, I had to wait for him to be done with stuff. So I just sat out there printing 3D printable chainmail. And I mean, you don't need any support material for this stuff because wherever it needs to like bridge over other objects, like all these pieces can be printed through each other and like linked together like chains. And people at IBM loved it because like you could literally print 90 degrees out into like free hanging space and then print back, and it would do okay as long as you had it calibrated properly. But I mean, that process will never do perfectly, which is why I think the closed source people aren't as much of a fan of it. But heck, if you can find 3D printed chainmail on YouTube, you'll see like it just goes like right through the air. It's beautiful.
All right, we are about finished up, or about hitting the 2-hour mark, I should say.
Mhm.
So let's get one or two more audience questions in.
Sure.
Matt the Shadow Man asks, will 3D printers be able to make something that children could play with in the future?
They already do. Like, I know some people took some measurements of Legos and stuff, so you can go print out Lego blocks that are compatible with normal Legos.
Wow.
And I mean, technically, like you can just take a 3D scanner and take any like children's toy and make a copy of it. I mean, it's almost a trivial process, unless there's like multiple interlocking parts and stuff, in which case you'd have to take the thing apart and then scan it and then put it back together, unless you just want to make the copy and put the copies together. I don't know. I mean, but I've seen tons of like toys and things and puzzles and whatever else. I mean, just look at Thingiverse. It's full of stuff that you can download a car. Go do it.
You wouldn't download a car off the internet.
Oh, yes, you would. We're at that stage.
It's just... I'm sorry. I'll shut up.
Any other questions?
One more. Do you want a more serious question or a silly question?
Maybe we can squeeze both in.
Okay. Matt
I'll
the
try
Shadow
to-
Man asks, where do you see yourself in the future? What would you like to see from ponies in the future, both the show and the fandom?
Well, for the show, I actually like the amount of freedom that the comics have been given, and I wish the show could be given the same. I don't know if that's possible, or I don't know. We'll just see. We'll see. But from the fandom, that's again the project that I was working on, the program that I wanted to write. Essentially, I'm writing a program that I hope will bring the fandom back together a little bit. It'll be like a bookmarking system that keeps track of pages automatically for you, so you can participate in multiple communities in the Brony community because I mean that's what it's turned into. Like it used to be just like 4chan and stuff, but now new sites keep opening up, and it sort of keeps spreading and diffusing everywhere else. And I don't think it's going back, at least not through traditional, like not the same way it came this way. But if we can get all these little communities in the Brony community to interact between each other a little bit more, that may be a good thing. I don't know. We'll try it out. We'll see how it works.
Okay. All right. One more question. You know what? I actually kind of like this one. My brony side asks, have you ever just put in random calculations into the computer and looked to see what you made?
There's actually a program for that called OpenSCAD. It's like a programming language for shapes. Take a look at it. It looks almost like C, and essentially you make a program that represents a 3D object. And I mean, for a lot of things, it's quite useful. And I mean, you can play around with that. That's what I've done a lot of the time.
All right. With that, we have hit the 5 o'clock mark. Do you have any last minute comments you want to say, Mike? Any last things?
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the cool stuff Technocopia was doing. Besides just the what are they? The servo motor stuff, right? So there was another guy at Technocopia who was making a universal joint that's also a gear.
Wow.
So cool. I mean, I don't even know how to explain what it's shaped like, but it's like a ball joint made out of 2 porcupines. That's as close as I can explain what it looks like. Very clever mathematician and general programmer behind that one.
Sounds
and then,
like it.
in general, I mean, it's a nice little, almost business incubator sort of thing. And my college, WPI, had, supposedly they got the new dean of business from RPI, who has this little business incubator there. And I think maybe the plan is to make a business incubator here. And I had heard that the people at Technocopia were trying to talk with the business department as well as the robotics department, who just in general wants 3D printers and cool things to play with.
Sure.
But yeah, it would be really cool to see Technocopia become like almost a method of taking students from the college and allowing them to make their businesses. I mean, a lot of the top colleges have started doing that, the really competitive places, and I really hope my little college does the same thing.
That's not a dumb move on their behalf. Not only
On
yours, but anyone's. Yeah, I was going to expand that.
Fun stuff. I guess I should let you go.
That's your call, Mike.
I can't think of anything else to say.
Fair enough. Then we will wrap this up. So, on behalf of us, we want to thank you, Mike, for stopping on by.
Also, remember episode 5?
1, 2, or 3? Season 1, 2, or 3?
Not in the show. Babble with Bronies.
Oh, yeah.
we didn't mention that at all. Everyone, go back, check like episode 5 or something. You'll probably see me there.
Weren't you there in the very beginning, episode 0?
Yeah.
Yeah, episode 0, and I know for sure 0. I think you were there 3?
Yeah. Well, I wasn't there every episode. I got more and more busy over the years, over the months. Also, you're welcome, and thank you guys for being awesome. Because someone said thank you in the comments for the interview. Right?
Mr. Ben asks one last question that I do think would be interesting to ask. Would you be willing to come back for another interview?
Sure. Perhaps on some other topic. There's a lot of other things besides 3D printing.
Sure.
Wonderful things to talk about.
All right. Go ahead.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about the local brony club, which my college has. Another day, perhaps.
I wanted to touch upon the John Delancey interview myself.
Oh, that was fun.
That was.
Yeah. That was also very random. It was like I came up to Elliot like one day and I was like, "Hey, I just asked Mike Brockhoff if we could interview him, and he said, "Hey, Delancey's free. You have 30 minutes." And then it's like, "Oh God, how are we going to do this?"
That was a day I will never forget, and half of it is just because of that. For those of you who weren't here, this was this was in between the weeks of episode 34 and 35. So this was we were just in the transition of getting onto Brony State. So a lot of things just basically fell apart on my end.
Oh, we got through it.
We got through it, and that was.
I thought it was funny though. At the beginning of the interview, you were like, "Is this really John Delancey?" It's like, "Can you say your name, sir?"
No, I was
John
doing that
Delancey.
I wasn't doing that on my behalf. I was doing that on the chat's behalf.
Fair enough, but
Because-
still, like, it was so unbelievable. It was as if, oh my God, it's really him. How did this even happen?
Because what I wanted to have happen was some surprise guest that, all of a sudden, what's going on? What's up with this interview? And then I am John Delancey. And all of a sudden it'd be like, the chat would just freeze for a minute. It was like, who? Yes, I really am John Delancey, the voice of Discord, people.
Fair enough. You have a lot of experience with this thing. I wish I could be as good with interviewing people. That's a good, like, intuitive thing to just do on the fly.
I feel I'll be
Goodness
giving my
gracious.
secrets away one day. Even in the middle of the show. Like, it'll be like episode 75 or something, and I'll say, this is how I structure interviews. And then people will go off and make some copycat show that'll be more successful than me, and I'll be going, why did I do that?
Competition's always good because it forces innovation and whatnot.
Exactly that. I agree 100%.
Though, oh, and have you guys been talking with, what was it? The other guy that Mike Brockhoff allowed.
This should probably be something we should stop the interview.
Fair enough,
Stop the
right.
streaming. We'll talk about that in a second. But
Yeah.
anyway, let's wrap this up. For myself, as I said, thank you very much, Mike, for stopping on by.
Right.
For all of us here at Babble with Bronies, I am Everlasting Joy, and my co-workers Twilight is Magic and Mr. Ben. We want to thank you for stopping on by, everyone in the audience. And next week, I promise you, Season 2, Episode 4, Luna Eclipse, will be reviewed. So
I might
stop
be
on
there.
Huh?
I'll try to be there.
Okay, fantastic.
Usually busy, but who knows?
So with that, folks, we want to thank you. And with that, farewell.
Good night, everyone, and have a good. Well, yeah, that pretty much. Awkward.
I haven't stopped the stream. I always have to wait so that everyone gets it on their end.
Okay.
So yeah, that's why there's always this long, awkward silence afterwards.
Mm. Anyways, thanks, everyone.